When crime haunts the night, a silent crusader carries the torch of justice. Those with evil hearts, beware, for out the darkness comes the Grey Ghost. Here's your look at the DC Collectibles Batman the Animated Series, figure number 42, the Grey Ghost. Tonight's episode is called The Mad Bomber because the Grey Ghost comes included with one of the Mad Bomber cars, a signing autograph pen, and a copy of the Grey Ghost on video. Now, before we get this review underway, we're going to figure out how tall the Grey Ghost is. I'm going to go right to the very top of the hat. That seems as good of a place as any, stopping the Ultra Megatron right there. 5,000 Ultra Megatron 5,000. According to that, at the very top of his hat, you're looking at the figure standing 6.3 inches in height, which in centimeters works out to be, let's go ahead and do that right now, 16, just a little over 16, 16.1 centimeters tall. And for a couple of size comparisons, we'll bring in some of the other figures that we had a look at, all from this new recent wave of figures from the folks over at DC Collectibles. Put the Scarecrow next to the Grey Ghost. Considerable size and overall kind of proportionately skinnier is the Scarecrow. And then we also had a look at Hardak Batman. Really a mixture of various different molds, different designs, very unique to each other. One thing also I must say is I'm really happy that DC Collectibles have switched out the new knee joints to utilize these new double hinge joints. One thing that is good about that is not only do you get a little bit more posability options to it, but also long term, I feel as if these legs are going to hold out a little bit longer. Some of the problems, if I had a small problem with the older figures, was because they used a single hinge in the knee. It often at times meant that the knees and the legs were going to get it really loose. Using double hinges doesn't seem to be as much that issue. So I'm hoping not only will these figures already have them, obviously, but I'm hoping that future figures will also have the same double hinge knees. It's a good thing that DC Collectibles has switched over to this type of format. Having a look at the figure's accessories, he comes included with his gun, which I look at the gun and it automatically makes me kind of think of the Green Hornet gun. The actual gun had a very similar looking design. It looks like it has been painted in all gray, and keeping it primarily to just this color makes it a little bit more accurate to the way it looked in the episode. Currently, he is holding a hand that in theory does technically hold the gun. It does also allow the finger, which I do bend out for a little bit of that. You can get the finger onto the trigger, but you will have to bend the finger a little bit. I find that the finger naturally wants to curl towards the fist. Bending the finger out just slightly, you can get the actual finger to fit onto the trigger, and you can have him actually looking as if he's about to fire his gun. So that's one of the accessories that he comes included with. I wanted to look at that accessory first because a lot of the other accessories, if you look at all the hands, the other hand options, they're all specifically for this hand rather than this hand here. So I wanted to show you guys the gun first and foremost. The other neat accessory that it comes included with is the full mini-series, the full series of the Grey Ghost on video. Now, obviously, this will play a big role at the very end of the episode where Bruce Wayne is getting a copy of this signed. And he says, thanks, Mr. Trent. You know, as a kid, I used to watch you with my father, and the Grey Ghost was my hero. So then the Grey Ghost kind of remembers that Batman had said that earlier into the episode and kind of puts two and two together. Very nice recreation, though small, yes. A recreation of the full series of the Grey Ghost on video. I really, really like the fact that they include that. Speaking of including, they also include a hand that actually is wide enough, let me just fit that in there, to hold the copy of the Grey Ghost. It doesn't fit, it doesn't stay, I should say, in there well. Let me just go ahead and pick that up, there we go. It doesn't fit and stay in there well, but you can get it wedged in there, and he can hold the copy of the Grey Ghost in his one hand. The other thing he comes also included with, and it's something as well that can fit into his hand, is one of the cars from the episode The Mad Bomber. Really neat the fact that they would include the Mad Bomber car. I ideally would have loved the fact that they could have given us more than one car, maybe 2 or 3 of them, but we do get one, and that's good enough for me. I love the fact that, again, we get that little Mad Bomber car. The tires don't spin or anything like that. It does have the little mask face there on the front of the car and the little camera there on the top, the little antenna as well. So a nice little recreation of the car. Love the fact that, again, we would have gotten something like that. So we'll just put that over to the side. And then last but certainly not least, he does come included, kind of going back, harking back to the copy of the Grey Ghost on video. He comes also with a little autographing pen. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and take the gun out of his hand, because we're going to also want to take out this hand altogether. As I said, all the hands only are on this side of the figure. So when you are changing out hands, you kind of have to decide for yourself which hands you want to use and which hands you want to vacate. Love the fact that little nod also to the fact that he does have the little, the little signing pen. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the means to. You could, in theory, put it in this hand, but it doesn't quite sit stable enough. It slides out of his hand. I guess you could kind of prop the tape up, or prop his hand up to have him holding the tape. But often at times, I just dropped it again. The tape just sits really, really loose. But I'll maybe see if I can try to balance the two, put the videotape into his hand, because really that might be a fun way to display the figure if I don't necessarily want to display him with the gun. Yes, very carefully, I've got the tape in his hand, but it really just, it doesn't stay. I wish they could have actually given us the gripping hand for this side, because again, that hand, I just don't find it holds it well enough. This might be something I might entertain to displaying the Grey Ghost with. I just kind of think that's a nice little nod. As much of it was a nod in the show to have Adam West play the Grey Ghost, and then again having Batman at the very end thanking the Grey Ghost for being his hero, I think this kind of would be a fun way to display the figure. Nonetheless, like I said, the tape doesn't stay in his hand. We'll go ahead and pull the hand with the pen out and replace it back to the way it was, just to kind of get everything back ready, steady, go. So having a look at the Grey Ghost, you kind of feel the inspiration perhaps coming from old serials like The Shadow. The Grey Ghost kind of has a very similar looking design, though instead of black, Grey Ghost, of course, as the namesake would state, the figure is kind of clad here in all gray. Light gray for the top, light gray for the slacks. The only darker grays start coming into play for his hat, his gloves, and kind of in his cape area as well. I was going to say his shoes, but his shoes are actually more black. Now, it's noted as well for this particular figure, whereas the other two figures that we had a look at, Hardak and Scarecrow, both had peg holes on the undersides of their feet. Well, one peg on the underside of one of their feet. It's to note, though, that Grey Ghost doesn't have that. He doesn't come with a display stand either as well. I'm wondering why DC Collectibles omitted a peg hole, because really the heel is large enough that it would support a peg hole there, or a peg hole right there. This one, unfortunately, doesn't come included with that. As for his face is very, very much looking like Grey Ghost from the episode. A kind of more aged looking Grey Ghost, which actually kind of takes some cues. I mean, we talked a little bit about The Shadow, but I can't help but feel like the older Bruce Wayne from Batman Beyond kind of looking a little bit like this as well. Very high cheekbones, very narrowed jawline, very, very chiseled chin. Does feel a little bit like like we're looking at older Bruce Wayne as well. Now, the hat is not removable. It's made up of softer plastic. The cape also is made up of a softer plastic. It does almost kind of look like it's the same cape that they would have used for one of the Batman. Like, it just seems like the way the cape kind of curls in a little bit, especially as well the way it runs across the top of the torso area here. I feel very much like this probably was a reused cape from one of the older figures. But even if they did use that and just simply have just done it in a gray plastic, perfectly fine with that. Not a whole lot of detailing happening here. He's got the button-up front vest, or front section of his jacket here. It's not, like I said, really a whole lot of color to speak of, but really where the charm with this particular figure, first and foremost, is the fact that we even got ourselves a Grey Ghost. So I applaud DC Collectibles for giving us a Grey Ghost, but the charm is of course the the memory of the episode. It's really one of my all-time favorite episodes of the Batman, the original animated series. I just love the Grey Ghost. So the fact that I physically have a Grey Ghost in hand, not bothered by the slightest that he maybe doesn't have some of the bright colors that, say, for example, Scarecrow had, because really that's not what it's all about. The fact that we would even get ourselves, like I said, a Grey Ghost, I'm just thrilled by it. I don't know if we would ever see ourselves potentially getting ourselves, like, for example, a Mad Bomber. A Mad Bomber would be awesome because, again, that just really is, that was Bruce Timm being in the episode. And even like the look of the Mad Bomber was Bruce Timm. So maybe we may eventually get ourselves a Bruce. I don't think we'll ever get ourselves a Mad Bomber. But needless to say, let's have a look at the articulation on this guy. His head rotates technically all the way around. I don't know why you would want to rotate your figure's head all the way around. Realistically, it doesn't do that in real life, but nonetheless. I also applaud the fact that his hinge joint in his neck, his head goes considerably far down, and equally so, considerably high up. The arms hinge out like so. Let's just, sorry, we'll just bring the head back again. The arms rotate all the way around. They do manage to get around the flap of the cape. So you don't have to worry that when you are moving the arms, they'll stop and you're adding resistance. Not really the case. They bend at the elbow point of the arm, and the forearms also rotate, and the hands also rotate as well. A hinge back and forth. The upper torso does have a waist swivel. It doesn't appear to have a ball joint. The legs split out. They go forward. They go back. They bend at the knee. Double hinge now on the knee. The feet hinge back and forth, and also they rock at the ankle. Possibly, I mean, again, as I look at figures like this, I always try to think in the back of my mind what they could use these molds for moving forward. As I think I've seen at least, this cape being utilized with older Batman figures, possibly like the lower legs could ideally be used for suited figures, for example. Maybe possibly the upcoming release of the classic Two-Face may also utilize some of the new moldings and new posable legs that they've got molded for these figures. Maybe he'll probably utilize some of that lower torso. You never know. In Beware the Grey Ghost, Bruce Wayne got to meet his childhood hero, Simon Trent, someone of which he grew up with his father and watched the adventures of the Grey Ghost on TV, in a way that sort of mirrors us, the viewers. In that episode, we got to see Adam West, or hear Adam West, come back and reprise a role as a hero. And while it necessarily wasn't the Caped Crusader, it was someone in a very much shadow-esque sort of look, the Grey Ghost. It was one of my all-time favorite episodes. In fact, when I do go back and watch the Batman the Animated Series, The Grey Ghost is one of the top 5 episodes that I go back and watch frequently. It also so happens to be, when I was growing up and watching Batman the Animated Series, it seemed to be the episode that was on the TV the most. Periodically, if I ever flipped to the show on TV, it usually was Beware the Grey Ghost. So I kind of feel through that, I grew such a fond love for that episode above all the others. DC Collectibles has really done a great job and a service to the Grey Ghost character, a character of which I never really thought I'd ever see in figure form. I do like the accessories that he comes included with, some really nice nods too, some real touching nods, such as the writing autograph pen, something which they didn't necessarily have to include, but I'm really glad that they did. If I could eventually get the videotape into his other hand, maybe I might even consider displaying the figure, having him signing the copy for Bruce Wayne, a touching moment that we saw at the very end of the episode. Or, as you see here in Final Looks, I might even have him holding the Mad Bomber car. It's a shame, though, he didn't get more than one car. I would have loved to see maybe him getting 2 or 3 cars, maybe one of the cars being exploding or kind of in an explosive state. Either way, if you guys are interested in picking this one up for yourself, Grey Ghost should start appearing soon. Scarecrow and Hardak and Grey Ghost I was lucky enough to get from DC Collectibles early, so that's why we're having a look and a chance to have a look at these figures before they hit store shelves. But Grey Ghost should be appearing probably within the next week or so keep your eyes peeled and keep your eyes checking your local comic book stores and whatnot to see when these new figures will be hitting. Today, though, we were having a look at the new Batman the Animated Series, and this was the Grey Ghost from the folks over at DC Collectibles, a really neat looking figure. And I also want to add though, even though they don't have display stands, so far I've had no problems having the figures standing upright. A couple of people have asked me on Facebook, have you had any problems with the figure standing? Even Scarecrow with the smallest footprint and thinner legs, I've had no problems with them standing so far. So really, that double hinge joint in the knee is working out tremendously. Still hoping that they're going to continue that trend with future figures. If you guys want to go back and have a look at some of my other DC Collectibles Batman the Animated Series figure reviews, there's a playlist for that. Make sure as well you hit that little subscribe button down below if you haven't done so already. And also, if you could do a service for me, hit that little notification bell. Make sure you set it to full notifications. It's even silly that we're having this conversation, but it's one of the things that YouTube wants you guys to do now, because apparently without that, you may not be interested in watching the videos. That's apparently what they think. So you want to make sure you hit full notifications on that bell so that when new videos are coming to this channel, you guys will never miss out. Speaking of which, new videos will be coming soon, so stay tuned for those. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time.